All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Difficult Conversations by Supply the Why. Believe it or not, this is season 7, and we're back at it after taking a little bit of a break, and we're starting just the way we left off with lots of momentum. So tonight, I have a very special guest, somebody who isn't just somebody that I met in my adult life, it's somebody who I met as a teenager, and I kind of took a step into adulthood with this young man. He was the starting quarterback on my college football team, and we were co-captains together many, many years ago. So we've grown quite a bit. We've gotten a little more gray and a little more bald, but the love is still there. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring Emil on.
How we doing, Dean?
Emil, how you doing, brother?
Dude, you're dating us too much there.
See, you're nice and clean-shaven, and your bald looks natural. With me, you can tell that my hair's falling out, and I look like Father Christmas with all the white hair in my beard. How you been, man?
I'm good. No complaints.
All right. So we got a lot to talk about and not that much time. So let's talk to me a little bit about Ragnar. Talk to me a little bit about what you do now in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, so I spent 20 years in college strength conditioning. And then about 4 years ago, my kids getting older, so started looking at some other opportunities and got an opportunity to step out of it. And with that job, I was also able to start my own business. So training youth athletes as young as my youngest son, who's in 5th grade, and some of his buddies, and then up through college. And then back in September, I actually started back in college. So I'm actually the head strength coach at the University of Hartford now as well. So being able to do both now is, the best of both worlds for me. So it's a lot of fun, but a little bit of a juggling.
It's got to be tough. I mean, University of Hartford, is that Division II, Division I?
So it is Division I. So I was actually the head strength coach there about 20 years ago. I was there for 4 years before I went down to Yale. And last spring, they actually made the announcement that they're going to transition to Division III. So we're in a bit of that transition now. When is that fully going to happen? I think it's another year before we actually make that full transition to D3. But yeah, we're going to be a Division III school with some amazing facilities because, obviously as a Division I, we've got an unbelievable baseball, softball stadiums, soccer, lacrosse stadium, weight room, athletic training. So it's, in many ways, it's going to be a phenomenal opportunity. So
talk to me about the personal training point, because one of the reasons why we scheduled it the way we did was everybody right now has some sort of promise, resolution, however you want to call it, about getting in better shape and making some sort of change to their lives. Yeah. So what are you hearing, and how would you recommend that people go about making some of these changes in a way that is sustainable?
Yeah, I think probably the two most important things, number one is accountability. So when people are looking to make a New Year's resolution and get back to the gym or maybe eat better, you got to have somebody to do it with. When you're trying to do it by yourself, just like anything else in life, like it's hard to go back every day and continue that cycle. So really trying to find accountability, whether you have a buddy to do it with or your spouse or whatever it might be, or if you set up with a trainer, and ultimately that's the best thing because then you're invested, as you're paying for that service. So you're going to show up, you know what I mean? And, and I think the other thing is be realistic, and I always tell people if you want to start a fitness program and your goal is to lose weight, you can weigh yourself day one, but don't get on a scale for 3 months. And they look at me like I got 3 heads. And I say, well, here's the thing. Let's just say in a daily, on a given day, your body weight's going to fluctuate 3 to 5 pounds. So depending on what you've eaten, what you've drank, what time of day it is, your body weight, you might not get a real true sense of where your body weight is. Now, let's say you get on a scale 3 months from now and you lost 5 pounds. Okay. Well, some people look at it as a glass is half empty and say, hey, I just did all this work. I only lost 5 pounds.
Sure.
Or the glass is half full and it's like, all right, I just lost 5 pounds in 3 months. I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year. So I think everything, just like anything in life, like you have to have perspective, but also looking at it with an open mind and saying, okay, where am I today? Where do I want to get to? And what are the steps I need to take to put me in position to be successful?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the next things I wanted to bring up to you is why, like you talked about accountability and you talked about, setting realistic goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we've all heard that before, but why is it that so many people fall off their routine in less than a month?
You know what? I think it really, honestly, I think it comes back to that. Like it's not easy to go to the gym every day. It's not easy to put your body through that stuff. It's not easy to commit to not having cookies at night or having some ice cream, or, hey, take 3 months and don't have a beer. It's not always easy to make those choices. But I think, again, that's where you have to look at it as an individual and say, look, this is my goal. This is what I want to achieve. It's no different than, how do you get to where you want to get to as a professional? You set goals. Okay, what's my first step? What's my next step? Okay, once I get there, now what do I have to do if I want to get to that next level? It's the same thing with health. You know what I mean? And I think if we look at just our society as a whole, if we could get more people exercising, healthcare costs are going to go down, medical, all that stuff. So there's a huge, obviously, piece to it, when you start to factor all of it in. But again, I think ultimately it just comes down to, an individual making a decision. But again, if you start something, finish it, make that next step and keep yourself going.
All right. That's fair enough. So one thing I do want to address, some of the monster in the room. It's some of the common myths of weightlifting. Yeah. So talk to me about some of the myths you hear. I know you hear some crazy excuses / reasons that people have for why they can or cannot do something. So talk to me about some of the crazy things you've heard, and what do you say to clients when they try to throw them on you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest one is I don't have time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, let's be honest with you. Everybody's got 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes during the day, whenever it might be. So I think with that, I think making people understand, like, just do a little bit a lot. If you do a little bit a lot, it adds up, over time. And ultimately, that's what it takes to change our body, whether it's to, add some lean body mass, lose some fat, whatever it might be. So if it's somebody that, is simply trying to start exercising for the first time, again, hey, don't try to go, for 30 minutes or go for an hour, 15 minutes in the morning and then 15 minutes after lunch. Guess what? You just did 30 minutes of exercise for the day.
I love it.
So start simple. You know what I mean? And when I left college, I was working with an older population. And when you deal with, people who are 60 years and older, pretty much I think the statistic is about 75% of them live in a constant state of dehydration. So what I would tell them is, hey, listen, go get the smallest cup in your house, fill it up, and drink that every hour. And if you do that, you're probably going to drink about 4 pints a day. But if you fill up a pint glass, you're going to take 3 sips and be like, I can't drink this. And you pour it out and you don't go back to it. So again, do a little bit a lot. And now we get all the work done that we're trying to get done in a given day.
That's amazing. Honestly, I think you found the slogan for Ragnar. That is honestly, that I could see that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's killer, Emil.
But just trying to keep it simple, in a lot of ways. And then, the two probably other biggest things that I deal with, number one is dealing with females, whether it's female athletes or, female clients, and understanding that, I don't want to get big and I don't want to look like a football player. Well, a couple of things. Number one, you don't have the testosterone to build that kind of muscle. Number two, we're not going to get that much volume in you to put on that kind of lean body mass. You know what I'm saying? So getting them to understand that. And I think the big piece is always if you have examples. So for me, working in college, it was always my juniors and seniors. My freshmen would come in and be kind of, if they've never been in a weight room before, be a little bit nervous, taken back by kind of what the older kids are doing, but then start to look at them. Okay, she can, move that kind of weight, but she still looks like a woman. Okay, now I can push a little bit harder. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then they start to see, okay, yeah, there's going to be times we might hit a little more volume. My jeans get a little bit tight. And then as we transition through our different phases, my body feels like normal again. You know what I mean? So understanding what that cycle is like and what it looks like. So I think that's obviously a big one. And then obviously the last one is, when you start to look at dealing with kids, and that's kind of where you and I are. We've got our sons and daughters, and, getting them into doing some exercise and stuff like that. And, everyone says, oh, if you lift weights, it's going to stunt your growth. Like, and honestly, like, I still get that question.
Of course you do.
I still get that question from parents, and I laugh, and I just say, okay, well, let me tell you about, my oldest son, who's a junior in high school now, and he was, 5'2", 97 pounds as a freshman in high school. He was tiny. Now he's a junior. He's 5'10" and a half, and he's 140 pounds. You know what I mean? So, and this kid's been, training with me since he was, 5, 6, 7 years old. And again, not like, typical like you and I would when we were in college. Like you're not doing those types of things, but he's been doing push-ups and squats and lunges and all that stuff. So again, I think perspective sometimes, but when you can use an example and say, look, here's reality. You know what I mean? Like, I get where you're coming from, but this is reality. And no, it's not going to stunt your growth. It's healthy for the kids. You know what I mean? So
it's got to be a tough conversation, though, Emil, because, again, I mean, this isn't new. This is something that we heard when we were young. I remember asking my parents for a weight set, for my 11th birthday, and they, same thing. Oh, it's going to stunt your growth, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
I try to explain to people, like, you're not doing Olympic lifting. You're not lifting 400 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like, to really, when I talk about youth training, it's got to be fun. It's teaching them how to use their body weight, teaching them about spatial awareness. And, so you're doing some med ball stuff and you're doing body weight, even something as simple as teaching a kid how to do a real push-up, and we use blocks to be able to progress kids down to actually being able to do a full push-up. But in saying that, my youngest son, who's a fifth grader, last winter we had a group of, 7 of his friends that were all training together. And by over a 20-week period, these kids are all fifth and sixth graders, they're doing 10, 15 push-ups with a 25-pound plate on the back of their shoulders. Like, okay. It was, honestly, Dean, it was amazing to see the growth. But again, these kids come back and we're having fun. But again, it's serious, obviously, because we're doing some training and they understand that. And then they start to compete against each other. And, so it's a blast. It really is. But you need that right environment. And you also need perspective that it is a fifth or sixth grader. It's not a high school kid and it's definitely not a college kid. So how you're going to progress them and the things you want to do with them to engage them, I think is the most important thing.
So that brings us to an interesting segue. Great points. But, being somebody who, like you said, once upon a time I lived in a weight room. Yeah. Those days are far behind us. But there was once a time where, I was in there six days a week, probably training too much, to be honest with you. And it got to the point where it just wasn't fun, man. It just felt like a job all the time. Yeah. Do you think, so that piece that you talked about, children having fun, do you think adults miss that point sometimes?
Oh, no question. No question. And I think the other side too is like, you need that variety, and I think that's the hard part is, a lot of times people go to the gym and they don't know what to do. So then they just do the same things over and over and over again. And it gets stale and it gets boring. And that's the biggest piece I explain to my clients is every 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to change your program up. Whether we're doing some volume work where we're on a stopwatch, or we're going to do actually like, sets of 10, or we might even do sets of 5. So I think, and I think that's where if you use a trainer and somebody that's got a good background and can actually, teach you some things on how to train correctly and then how to periodize and change things up as you move forward. I think that's where you engage us as we get older, is all of a sudden the body's doing things that, oh man, I haven't been able to do this, or I never thought I could do this. That's even the better line that I get. Like, I never thought I could lift 30-pound dumbbells. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we're just getting warmed up here. So you would say that, in your opinion, again, obviously you're biased because this is what you do. No question. It's worth it to have somebody that's outside your head and outside your comfort zone and outside your limits, kind of putting these programs together for you. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's and again, like you said, like for me, I'm biased because that's what I do, but I also see the results of my clients. And the biggest thing, I remember going back to when in college and, you have your seniors that have been with you for 4 years, and they show up when they're supposed to be there, every day, do exactly what they're supposed to do. And then they get done and they go in the gym like, Coach, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What do I do today? Can you write a program for me? They're like, you've told me what to do, when to do it, how many to do, how much weight to put on the bar for 4 years. I don't even know how to train, even though I've been training for 4 years. It's hilarious. But that's definitely where it comes in. And if you spend a little bit of money, the return on your investment, again, provided you do some research and make sure you get somebody that's qualified, I think the return you get to engage you, to keep you training long-term wise is well worth it.
All right. Well said. So we got a question that I knew was going to come. All right. So the question is from Mike. Where did the name Ragnar come from? When I first heard the name, I thought it was a Danish warrior. Strong name.
Yeah. It's actually my middle name. So it is. Yeah. So my dad was a first generation Swede born here in the United States. And I'm a junior. And so as I was growing up, I always, I never told anybody my middle name because
you sure didn't.
They couldn't make fun of they made fun of my first name because it was different. And, now I tell my middle name and, I'm from Mars or something, but no, in all honesty, I always had a vision of, being able to use my middle name. And then actually when the Vikings show came out, I was like, oh man, this guy's going to screw me over. Now I can't use my middle name because he'll think I'm taking it from there, and then I just had that idea, when my dad passed back in 2017 to take my middle name and to put the Swedish flag overlay on it. It all just kind of came together. So.
Man, I can't believe that all those years, 3 years of football we played together.
Not many people know.
You know what? We got somebody else that just chimed in. Another one of our teammates and captains. Obed says, "I didn't even know that." And Obed was in charge of your well-being for 3 years, right? So wow, the things that the things that you find out as time goes on,
right?
So this is a perfect transition to talk about your passion. Now, in talking to you, in the few times that we've talked, texted back and forth, clearly your passion is training young athletes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So talk to me more about that, about why you decided to settle on that end of the house versus, staying with probably where the money is, training adult clients and things like that.
Yeah. Part of it is when you spend 20 years in college, you see so many kids come into college that were in a program and then you got to fix so much of them. You know what I mean? And it gets
how so when you say fix, what does that
mean? Teaching a kid how to squat. A kid comes in, well, he's been doing, 3/4 squats for the last 4 years of high school with 500 pounds on his back. And, or you have, believe it or not, a kid come in, he can bench 300 pounds, but he can't do 15 push-ups because he's not strong enough, in his core to be able to stabilize his body and hold that position. So you just see so many imbalances in high school kids that come to college, and then you got to do some corrective stuff and fix them and get them solid again. So then you can build them even higher than where they should have been coming in. So a lot of it was based on that. And just that desire to help kids get opportunities, but put them in positions to be successful. And truthfully, I've probably learned more in the last 4 years than I did in my first 20 years training collegiate athletes, because we really had to take a step back and look at building that foundation and teaching foundational movements. And I'll be truthful with you. I use my oldest son as the example, but for a kid who only weighs 140 pounds, the amount of weight that he can move is, well over 2 times his body weight. And he has no issues with his back. He has no issues with stability and body control. And it's really opened up, a whole new light to me, which I wish I knew 20 years ago, because it definitely would have changed how I did things in college. You know what I mean? So.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because you and I had a conversation the other day about we were talking about power cleans.
Yeah.
So, just to give a little context to everybody out there, I'm still very much connected to my local high school. I always make sure that I talk up the athletes, make them feel good. let them know that, hard work will pay off and all that. And one of the kids asked me, he confided in me that he did not know how to do a very important exercise, one that I always thought was essential to explosion, which is called a power clean. So you said that you've actually started going away from those Olympic heavyweight movements, right?
Completely. Yeah.
Now, why is that?
Part of it is, it's a very technical lift. And again, when you're working with a younger athlete, you really have to put build that foundation, that base. And we know, you build a wider foundation, you get a higher peak, right? So I think really understanding that, but even in my 20 years of training, my football guys always did cleans, but they also bought into it and were 100% engaged when we were doing cleans. My women's soccer players hated doing cleans. All they would do is complain. So basically what I did, I said, okay, well, we're getting nothing out of this. We're getting it out of it on this end, though. So with my women's soccer players, boom, we started doing a little more contrast training. We would do some jumping and a lot more plyo work. So again, you're still getting that triple extension. You're still getting all that power output. And there was no difference. We saw their vertical jumps go up just like I did with my football players. So then as I kind of stepped out of it, then I started to look at, okay, do we want to spend all this time teaching cleans and doing cleans, or do we just want to spend more time jumping? At the end of the day, that's what you do in sport. So now if we're doing more jump training, we're doing more deceleration training. Now they're actually also learning how to control their body in space a lot better. And again, what we see is, again, vertical jumps just keep going up and up and up. And we're getting a lot more efficient and a lot more out of our workouts because we're not spending 20 minutes or 30 minutes focused on the cleans and trying to teach it. So in a lot of ways, I think it's enhanced our training program and really simplified it, to be honest with you. But again, it's all about results, right? I mean, as an athlete, you train to improve performance. So whether you're getting it done this way, through A or B, what's more efficient and beneficial and what makes the body feel better. That's the other piece of it.
Now, it sounds to me like everything you said here has a universal adapter for adults that are getting into training.
No question.
Again, if you're somebody who has a time crunch, if you're somebody like me, unfortunately, I mean, you've known this for years. The bad knees I played with in college now resulted in one of my knees needs a replacement.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody in that, it's just the way it goes.
Yep.
If you're somebody in that boat, what you're saying sounds super attractive. So I don't have to try to put a bar with 400 pounds on my back, 350 pounds on my back anymore.
Yep.
I could do jumps, or I could do some sort of body weight movement that's going to get me to where I need to go, as opposed to what I was doing before, which quite frankly sometimes hurt. Yeah,
and I'll be honest with you, like even now, like we rarely back squat now. Everything we do is either front squat or barbell split squats. And the beauty of it is I have a kid right now at Hartford that played at a high level baseball. He's a graduate student with us now, and talking to coach, and he had a conversation with him, trying to compare like what we were doing here versus what he did at his other school. And he's like, "Listen, coach," he goes, "I get it. We don't back squat." He goes, "But my legs feel as strong or stronger than they ever had. My back feels great. My hips feel much better." So again, I think you always have to evolve. You always have to continue to learn, but you also have to listen better to your athletes. And I think that's one thing, we kind of get stuck in a groove with a lot of things we do in life. And I definitely look back on what I did from a training perspective, my first 20 years versus what I've done the last 5. And that's why I say I've learned a lot probably more in the last 5 years, because we train a lot better. I think we train better now than we did, to be honest with you.
Well, let me transition to this really quick. Since we're talking about children, there's clearly an uptick in childhood obesity. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you would recommend to parents? Because I think a lot of parents are struggling with it, because let's face it, kids aren't outside playing and riding bikes and climbing trees and playing sports like they once were. A play date now consists of 2 kids sitting next to each other on their phones playing the same game.
Yeah, right? No, it's so true. It's
so. I mean, what are your thoughts? And this could be a completely opinion piece on yours about childhood obesity, and what can we do to kind of steer the ship in the other direction on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest piece is, as you know, is, kids don't have to get involved in a sport, but we got to get them more active. So how do we do that? And I know like at our kids' elementary schools, they have a running club in the morning. Some kids are running. Some kids just go and walk. That's an easy place to go get your kids some easy activity, and they're with their friends. So again, it doesn't have to be completely strenuous. But again, what we always want to make sure is we put kids or we put individuals in position to be successful. So if you put a kid in an environment like that, it really doesn't matter if they're a good athlete or not. They can just go hang out and walk with their friends. So I think trying to find some things like that is obviously positive. And honestly, I know like I've got two of my son's friends. They were a year older than him that come in and have been training with me, two bigger kids. And in the last 6 months, I mean, clean jawline, like leaning out. And again, when the body gets active, you're going to start to burn more calories, on a given day. And then it becomes habit, you know what I mean? And once you build that habit into your lifestyle, you want to keep doing it because you feel good. And so, I mean, I'm not really answering your question because it's a tough one to pin down in terms of how do we change things. But
again, your opinion, Emil, just your opinion. If you were just writing a complete editorial, some of the things that you think that we could be doing better.
I mean, the biggest piece is we need to have gym every day in school. It's that simple. You know what I mean? I think that's where it starts because that's where you can control them actually doing environment. They don't have their phones, iPads, computers at home, no video games. But if we have gym every day in school and we have recess every day, there's an hour every day where those kids are going to be physically moving themselves. And to me, there's always kind of things that coincide with each other as you go through. And, when they started to cut physical education and things of that nature, the uptick in child obesity just continued to grow. So I think at the end of the day, that's our number one starting point.
I like it. Those are definitely thoughtful responses because you're right. At the end of the day, at some point, we're the adults.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes you got to pull a seniority card. We're the adults, and you're going to do what we say. And if we kind of take away the choice, maybe you can turn things around. But I just see the way things are going, and it's not good.
Yeah,
it's not good at all.
Unfortunately,
no, it's not. So, Emma, believe it or not, we're down to about 2.5 minutes. So, tell us a little bit about what's important to you. How can people follow you? How can people learn more about Ragnar and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that we're on social media right now is on Instagram, Ragnar Strength Conditioning. Outside of that, we haven't really grown that much. I mean, I shouldn't say that we have, but it's all word of mouth, in the area, in terms of, I live in Ellington, Connecticut. But I can definitely, obviously get an email out there to you and pop that out a little bit and use Supply the Y to kind of promote myself a little.
Absolutely. I told you, fly your colors and let people know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? So if somebody saw this and they were like, you know what, I can't maybe meet with a trainer every day, but if they wrote you and said, hey, would you be willing to customize some sort of a workout for me?
Yep.
Do you do the online thing now that seems to be the trend that things are going in?
Yeah, you know what? I've done it a little bit, more so just for like friends and family, and it's, but it's definitely something I've kind of thought about getting deeper into. I think the tough part for me is I love to coach and, I'm a stickler for details and, kind of OCD with that a little bit. But again, I think that's one of the things that everybody respects about me when they come and train with me is they're not going to get away with anything. If your body's not in good posture, if your hips are out, if this is going on, like I see it all. And so I think that's where I think my challenge comes in to try to do things like that because it kind of takes some of my control of the environment away. So I think I would have to kind of work on that a little bit myself. But no, definitely, you know what I mean? And again, anything I can do to help guide people along, it's a win. Because it's going to change their lives, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter whether, it's me, you, whoever it might be. But if we can put somebody in a better place and make them feel better about themselves, it's a win for everybody.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. We're up on time. Emil, thank you so much for taking time away from your family, and hopefully somebody hears this and it helps them stay on track with their resolutions and their fitness goals. It's Ragnar one more time on
Ragnar
Instagram.
Strength Conditioning. Yeah.
Ragnar Strength and Conditioning on Instagram. So definitely follow, and check out some of the content that Emil has. It's great stuff. And if you're willing to take a chance, it can change your life. So everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. We got a lot of great content coming up in season 7. So please share, and follow our hashtag Supply the Why on all your favorite social media channels. So for Emil and everybody else out there, have a great night. And as always, hashtag Supply the Why.